Once you've created your pieces and separated your pieces, then it's time to clean them up and smooth them out. It's always best to look at them the way they're going to be sewn together. So you're not going to put the center front and back on top of each other. You're going to put the center back next to the side back, next to the side seam pair, and then the front and then the center front, or vice versa, however they are on your screen, but the way they sew together, because you want to match those lines. You want to combine lines and match notches and make sure that everything measures accurately. So I'm going to start by combining lines. We have a little discrepancy down here where it turns a corner, but I'm going to add extra flare right there. But I need to keep in mind that that extra line split is there. So I'm going to start by modifying my lines and combining them in a clockwise order. This one might not bite you if you don't do it clockwise, but it could. So I've combined that line into one, and I want to get that little itty bitty one. And you could see I kept catching that white one, so I need to touch down in the water and slide around to get the right line. If I had my pieces separated further apart, I wouldn't have that problem. Okay, so that's combined. And I'm going to combine any line. I don't want to combine my corners, but I want to combine everything else. And it looks like I only have corners now, and that's what I want. I've seen a few of them where people end up with a diamond shape. Oh, here's one. If you've got, what we're looking at right here is the end point of a line. It's an upward triangle, and so this line and this line are separate. But right here, we have that same thing. It's an upward triangle, but I also have a grade point. And when the grade point is attached to the end point of a line, it's the graded end point of a line, and you have a upward triangle and a downward triangle at the same time, and that just means there's a grade rule right there. If you're not grading yet, don't worry about it. It's okay to have downward triangles while you're working on the pattern. You just need to fix them when you grade. So combine them and then don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to start by comparing my measurements. So I need to go to verify line length. I want to make sure those two are the same, and those two lines. And while I'm at it, I could compare my front and back shoulder totals too. And when I get to my sleeve, I want to compare my armhole. But right now, we have 18.55 and 18.70. Well, that's less than 1/4 of an inch difference, as long as your center front line is shorter than your side body line and it's within 3/8 of an inch. You should be able to ease that in okay. So after I've got my line smoothed, I will probably just walk this along and add a notch here, and then walk it up from the bottom and add a notch here, so that I get all of this extra ease over the bust area. If it was more than 3/8 of an inch, I would look at trying to get rid of some of it. But the way we did that, it should be quite accurate. These are an exact match. I'll want to flip them over and compare shape. And this one is 2 points off, which is almost not measurable, but this one is the larger one, so that's good. So I want to look at, are my lines smooth? Do I have any bumps there? Do I want to make this less fitted? And if I want to make it less fitted, I'm going to put those so that they're side by side. And this is a little annoying right here. That's where it shifts direction. Is that my amount off? Because if that is my amount off, maybe I want to pull this line up and shorten it. So I'm kind of curious about that. I'm going to walk it from the top down. So that's verify walk. Select the line on the stationary piece. I want this one, and I want it going that way. Right click, say OK, and then I want that one, but I want to change direction, so I'm going to right click in the water and say change direction, and then OK. And as I walk this along, it's not quite right there. But I think I'm going to just change it. Okay, so as I walk this along, I could measure down and put a notch. I could also click right here and stop and add a notch. So if I wanted to add a notch that way, I would come up to create standard notch, and I'd put in one of them, and then I want to specifically choose the other one, but the one I've got right now is the side back. So if I want to add a notch visually, I'm going to want to add it. I'm going to come down to the bottom and click on the little dots and come up and choose the center back, and now I automatically have the other piece, and I'm going to highlight that line and come right to where that notch is and add another one. And I'm slightly off. I should have zoomed in more, so I'm going to try that again. And that's so close it's not letting me. So I'm going to delete that. Modify, delete notch. Oh, looks like I've got a whole bunch of notches there. Something I try to teach you not to do, and there I did it. Okay. If I had left those 3 notches there on top of each other and this got sent to the Gerber cutter that way, it would have had an error and cut a hole right there. So watch that and keep track of what you're doing. That could cost a company a lot of money. So it's probably going to be easier for me to add that by measurement, but I'm zoomed in all the way, and I'm going to try it one more time, and I'm going to walk along here, but there's an intermediate point really close, and it's just going to that intermediate point. So what I'm going to do instead is undo the notch, and I'm going to modify the line and split it. Oh, and see it's stuck on that piece. So last time I came down to the bottom and clicked on the dots. This time I can come up here to current pieces. If you have that set up that way, you can go to current pieces and clear all, so it's not hanging on to that one piece. So now I can come in and split the line where the notch is, and that tells me that that notch is at 2.98. So I'm going to cancel, and on this one I'm going to come up to create add notch, switch to value, and indicate my notch position, and I want it on this line, but I'm going to right click and say distance from point, and select the point to measure the distance from. That piece is flipped upside down, so I have a 50% chance of it going the wrong way. And I'm going to guess, I could be wrong, but I'm going to say negative 2.98. Well, it went positive, so I have a notch right here. So I'm going to do that again. Select, and I ignored that the thing was there. I touched down and slid. And I'm going to put in 2.98 positive this time. And there it is where it belongs. Say OK. And then I'm just going to go up and delete the notch that I put in on the wrong place. And if I modify split on this notch, then I have exactly 3. Why do I have 3 if I said 2.98? Oh, because I split the line in the wrong place. So you have to be really careful. So there's my split point. And if I don't want that intermediate point right there in the same place, I'm going to modify single point. No, I'm going to delete single point, and I'm going to delete that intermediate point, because sometimes having points that close together can be a bad thing, and it didn't affect the shape of the line. Okay, so we have both notches at 2.98, and that's what we want. So adding them as a measurement, or at least adding the second one as a measurement, can be more accurate. Now I've got this piece kind of messed up. Some of you are going to want to put it back the way it belongs. To do that, you're going to go up to Modify Piece Action and Realign. You're not going to realign the grain, you're going to realign the piece, and then touch it, and it goes back to the way it was. And that lines up and matches. So because I haven't because of the way these two shapes were separated, this one's coming down a little bit longer, so I don't feel bad. Oh, they're only 1 point off, but I'm going to walk them the rest of the way down. So verify, walk pieces, the lines on the stationary piece, they're both going the right way. The lines on the other piece is going the wrong way, so I have to change direction first and then choose the next one and then say OK. So, and I have to switch to cursor so that it moves the way I want it to. So my notches are lining up exactly, and I'm using the little roller ball on the mouse to zoom, and as I get down toward this end, I'm going to move my mouse out here in the water and then zoom in so I get the view I want. So that's looking really nice, and my curves are coming together right there. I like the way that's coming together, and we moved this line a little bit, so that's going to be all right, but I'm going to set it down right there. And I could have been a little bit more accurate if I had zoomed in. And I'm going to show you some things that might be a bad habit that you have to be careful about doing. But in looking at the way, those lines come together, they're really close. And I want to see where my intermediate points are. So view, intermediate points. I'm going to choose both pieces and say OK. And I don't have any intermediate points. You can see where the intermediate points are everywhere else, but I don't have any intermediate points down here that are going to affect my decisions. So I'm going to take this longer line and modify single point. I'm going to select the point to move. That would be this one. And I'm just going to line it up so it's on top of that one. Now, maybe they're the same length. I don't know. Let's see. What did I do? Now, you don't have to do all of these things. You're learning how to do things. I'm being overly nitpicky, perhaps, but they're within 1 point, and that's less than a 32nd of an inch, so I'm happy with that. And I've got this line that's straight up to here, and I've got this little messy area right here. So I'm going to split one of the lines where it's straight before it starts to curve. Modify line, split. Right there. And that line that's split, now I can flip around it because it's straight. So modify flip piece. I'm in piece. I'm flipping the piece about a line, and I'm choosing this one, and I'm going to say OK. So now I have my two pieces side by side right there. And I would like them on top of each other a little better than that. But I can see that I've got 4.52 right here. So I can do that same thing on the other side. So I'm going to modify split line, right click and say distance from point, and instead of this piece I'm going to choose this one. Well, where am I? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to come down to the end of that and say negative 4.52 and OK. So they're both split in the same place, and I'm going to separate them for a minute. This is a little mini version of something you might want to do with a longer piece. Because we're looking at the hem area, I could add flare there, and if I had made my pieces longer, then that little chunk that's missing would be even bigger. So I'm just going to straighten out that line. I want to keep this point. And if I zoom in right here, and create a 2-point line from up here where I can see it to where that line now is disappearing into that point. At the point that it disappears, set it down. And I'm zoomed all the way in. So I'm going to modify the line and split it right there, and then I'll put it back together. Modify line split, select point split, and when it's split right there, I'm going to swap the line. For the piece I'm working on, this is not really very important, but you will be working on pieces that have a space like that, and when you've got hip flare, it's best just to let it flare. So I'm going to swap my solid line for, oh, I didn't split it. You can see the whole line lit up. Modify line split. Right here. Let's try that again. Modify swap this line for this line. That time it's the same. So I can say OK, and now it's extended out. So I'm going to delete this line. Modify line. Oh, delete line. So why did I split the line before I did that? Because now the trajectory has changed a little bit, and I wanted the information before I messed with it. So now I'm going to combine these two lines back together. And if I wanted to, I could delete that intermediate point. So I'm going to do the same thing to this one. I'm going to zoom all the way in. Once I get it to a certain level, I'm going to zoom in, and you see me moving the mouse so that I keep it centered on the screen where I want it to be. So create 2-point straight line. Start far enough out that you can see where it's straight, cross over that point, and when the line disappears, oh, well, that did not help. Okay, well, it's just jumping to that point because it's such a small space, but we're pretending it's a bigger space. So that's where it went. It's going to keep doing that. So I could have come, if I had more space, I could have extended it out, but I'm going to show you how to solve that problem. So instead of deleting it and doing it over and making it longer, I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to modify the line and rotate the line, just plain rotate. Select the line to rotate, this one. The point to rotate around is the very end, and then I have it set to select a reference location. I could try bump to line. If I choose a reference location, I can pull it out to exactly where I want it, where it disappears into the line, and move it. And I am happy with that, and I can swap it, and maybe I want to make it a little bit longer, so I'm going to go up to adjust. And I know a lot of this is boring, but it's problem solving. If I had wanted to try the other way, so that's what I would do, and I would split the line and swap it again. But if we went back to modify line rotate and chose bump to line, I'm choosing this line, say OK, point to rotate around, point to guide the movement, select line to bump to. Well, that didn't help at all. So I'm going to go back to the other one. There are some times that will help you, but not this time. So I'm going to go back and rotate the line. modify line, rotate. Choose the end, deselect bump, and rotate. When it disappears, then it's in the right place. And I'm going to adjust the length again and pull it out. Modify split, right, no, I don't want to split that line. I want to split on this line at the same place. I don't want to make the same mistake I did last time. And then I'm still in modify, so I'm going to switch to swap and choose the dotted line and then solid line and then delete the line. And then combine the line. Okay. So they're still both at 4.52, and now I can put them back together where they're split. So I'm going to do modify piece set rotate, select the match point on the target piece, that end of the line, that end of the line, that line, and now they're stuck together, and I'm going to say cancel so that they end up right where they are. Well, now I've got this. And they were the same length, but because I split the pieces in the exact same place before I changed the length, I can leave it here and blend this. So to blend this edge, it's not a 90-degree angle right now. The more important factor is the smooth curve. So I'm going to create a 2-point curve that starts here and comes down to here, and then I'm just going to blend across. And usually when you put on a 2-point curve like that and blend across, you're going to get a 90-degree angle. Well, it started out, I can see, when I'm moving this back and forth, I can see that that white line I just put on there is attached to the upper piece and not the lower one. And I want that line on both pieces because I want to swap it and copy it so that they're the same. So I'm going to create line copy now and select the line to copy this one, say OK. I want it to go on this piece, so I'm going to say OK to that. There's my line. I'm going to come back and say cancel, so now I have one on both pieces. And I'm going to say OK to get out of that. And I'm going to move them apart. And I want to swap this for this, so I need to split right here. If you forget to split, you get a mess. Modify line split right there in the same place. And I'm going to do them both at the same time. So while I'm in split, and now I'm going to go back up to swap. I want this line instead of this one. And I want this line instead of this one. And now I'm going to delete those. Delete line. And some of you, I find at this point, can't tell which line you need because your lines are not dotted. And if you're finding that the lines on your screen are not dotted, like my lines, you can't tell internal lines from solid lines, lines that are permanent, lines that are temporary. And if you don't have dotted lines, come up to Edit, Customize, Screen Layout. Nope. Sorry about that. Customize, Display, and make sure you say clipped and dashed. You don't want solid lines here. You always want dashed. Apply, save, and OK. If you do apply and save, it's more likely to be this way when you come back next time. Okay, so those match now. And if I want to, at this point I can walk it up from the other direction and I have 15.01 and 15, so I'm happy with that. And I'm going to combine these two lines back, modify line, combine. Well, I want to combine those two and these two, those two. So your lines should only be split at the corners now. And now when I walk pieces, verify walk pieces, I'm going to start from the bottom and put in a notch. This is my stationary piece. I want it to go the other way though. Change direction. And it looks like I need to combine those lines, but I'll do that next. Oh, stationary piece, I didn't say okay. And then the walk piece. And it's going the way I want it to, so okay. So at this point, I could come in and put a notch here somewhere. You could put a notch anywhere between here, and that's up to you. And if probably what I would do is decide where I want it and just split it, because it'll be faster. In fact, I'm just going to put it where that point was. So I'm going to create a notch where I already had a point where the line was split. And if I split the point there just to see, modify line, split. See, that's what I should have done before. So 4.35. And if I split this one back again, that's still 4.35. So I'm going to add a notch there. And I could have thought of that a few minutes ago and saved that much time. Modify, combine. 1, 2, 3 lines. Okay. Modify, combine. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going clockwise in an order. Okay, so some of those lines you could smooth out more. I want this to go back. So I'm realigning the piece. So I've got those two matching. And I've fixed the hem so it's nice and smooth. These two look like they might need to be lined up. And these two, you'll go through the same process, but you'll be adding more flare right there than we did on the back. Okay. If I do set rotate on the back piece with the side piece, well, I didn't say cancel, so that's messy. And I've got them together. I can see this is a nice curve shape, which I would need to check. And I want to flip around this line, but if I flip around the line now, well, I'll show you because you'll remember. If I flip around this line, it goes crooked. So if I undo that and I modify the line and split it where the line is straight, and I flip around just that straight line, then I can tell that these pieces align exactly. And they might be a 1/16 of an inch off. and we could rotate them around and make sure they're okay, but I'm going to leave that one be. So I'm going to undo both of those and put this back over here. So I have this matches this and this matches this. And now we want to make sure these two pieces match. Well, this one, typically they're not going to end up the same because of the size of those two darts. As long as your center front line is the shorter line, because you don't want puckering on your center front line. It's okay if you have a little bit of ease getting your side front into your center front, but not the reverse. So because this line is the shorter of the two, it's okay. So 70 minus 55 is 15. So that's less than 1/4 of an inch. So that's going to be an okay amount to have there for ease. I am looking at these two lines, and if I want to make the curve slightly different, you don't want any bumps. Right here, there's a point that might be out of place, so I'm going to put my intermediate points on there. The view, intermediate, touch, touch. Okay. So I have where the curves are, you can see my intermediate points. It feels like it's that one. And in Tuca, I would probably go in and pick that point up and move it. In Gerber, I can blend that point, but I'm zoomed all the way into it now. And maybe I'll try moving that one single point a little bit. Or I could delete it. What would happen if I deleted it? Modify, delete point. Well, that's worse. So I'm not going to do that. But I can create a point. And I want to put a point here and a point here because I want to hold the line right there. And now if I come in and modify delete point and I delete that one, I just smoothed out that curve without extra drama. So you can go back and watch that again. But I added a point on each end where I liked the curve, and then I deleted the pointy one. And you've seen multiple times. If I want to change it, create 2-point curve, I could come into maybe this area, and if I wanted to flatten that curve out, I could do that too. And I am moving it a little bit to the side of the bust point. I'm curious, how far is that from the bust point? So I added a line just so I could measure the distance. Verify line length. That's less than 1/4 of an inch from the bust point. You can have that wrap around to the side at least 1/2 an inch before anybody notices. And depending on cup size, you could even go as much as 1 inch. So that's okay. You don't have to change that curve. I'm just showing you because if you want to, you can, but you don't need to do that. This is how to. So I'm going to delete that line, and I'm going to modify split. Oh, come over, touch down, slide, highlight, release. Same thing again, and split, modify line, swap, dotted line for solid line, and I'm going to delete that line. And now I'm going to combine it again and see what my measurement is, because I probably changed it a little bit. Modify combine. So I reduced it by a point. It's still less than 1/4 of an inch, so I'm happy with it. So I'm going to walk these pieces now. In fact, I'm going to split this line right here because I want all of this ease between here and here. Modify line split right here. 3.06. So I'm going to create a notch and I'm going to add it at 3.06. And then I'm going to add another notch, but this time I'm going to switch to value and right click, distance from point, ignore that and come back. Oop, touch that point and put in 3.06 and say OK. So I'm going to combine that line back. Ah! Okay. So now verify walk pieces, select the lines on the stationary piece. It's going from top to bottom. OK. Bottom to top, so change direction and then say OK. And now our notches are lining up, but it's not moving because I'm still in value, so I'm switching to cursor and now it's moving nicely. Well, I don't like that. And what if my difference here is because my length at the bottom has changed? What if I manually rotate that piece and look at it? Now I'm getting really nitpicky right now. This isn't something you would have to do. You could just measure up and put a notch right here and call it done. Modify, piece, rotate. Select the piece to rotate. Do I want it to go clockwise or counterclockwise? If I choose this one, no, I want to rotate the other one. So I want to be counterclockwise and I want to choose my side front. Say OK. The point that I'm rotating around is this one. So I'm going to choose a reference point and pull it out here. And that's actually about the same shape right there. Before I split that piece, I could have probably given myself a well, I might have been able to give myself a match point. So I'm going to do that one more time and zoom in a little tighter. And push that up to there. Well, we have an almost exact match right there. It's a little off. But what if I move that point up? What's my line length right now? I'm trying to think the same way I think when I'm working with paper. So I found a place to line it up, and I'm going to shorten that a little bit. So can I move that line? I think I can. So I'm going to take the longer one and I'm going to modify single point, and I'm going to move that one point and I'm going to drop it right there. Could have done a better job with that. When it disappears, it's in the right place. Okay, so I just made them closer in length than they were, and I'm happier with that. So I'm going to walk my pieces again, going up, and I'm going to add another notch right here in this area. And that will put all of my extra space right there. So I think I want to split it right here. Modify line split. Notch on the split line. And that's 11.61. So I want to split this line at 11.61. Modify line split. Right click in the water and say distance from point. Measure from the bottom up. 11.61. Negative, nope, not negative. Yes, negative. Negative 11.61. Did I say split? No, I said measure. What did I do? Okay, so I just split it. Now I need to add the notch. Uh-oh. Create notch, not modify notch. Okay, so I have this one and this one at 11.61. And this space is 6.93 and this space is 7.07. So we have 1/10 of an inch. And I probably would put another notch down here between these two as well, but this video is getting kind of long. Verify walk pieces. Change direction and then do the rest of them. Say OK. Change direction. Say OK. So now I have, these are matching. You knew they would. and you can see where the extra is going, and you just add that much ease right there in that little space, and that's going to look nice. So I'm going to take this piece and come back over to modify, realign the piece and put it back to the way it was. And while I'm here, you're going to extend this out and extend that out just the same way you did with the other pieces. So before I do anything, I'm going to come up and split this at 5 inches on both sides, maybe 4. What? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to split it at 4. Modify line split. Distance from point. I'm going to measure from this point 4 inches. So it's split right there. And I'm going to measure from this point -4 and say OK. So now you can line both of those up, extend this line out on both sides like we went over in zoomed in on the back, and split and swap. But before I go any further, I'm going to come up and save all of my pieces and say OK. And then go back to the beginning of the video where we extended the line on both sides and swap. And then you're going to end up modify, set, rotate. You'll end up putting these two lines on top of each other. And create a 2-point curve between the two. And blend that nicely. And you'll want to copy this line to the other piece, so create line, copy this line to this piece and say OK. And you just ignore those squares when they happen. Except I don't think I got my line copied. Create line, copy. Select the line to copy. Say OK. Put it on that piece. Say OK. There's the line, and then cancel. OK, so it's on both. And you can move them apart and swap the line and extend the line and do it one at a time. So if I create this 2-point line and it disappears into that line, and I create this 2-point and it disappears. When you swap these lines, you need to split here and split here and split here and split there. Don't try to swap this line and this line for this line and that one. Swap this line for this line, and then as a separate activity, swap this line for this line. So you'll be doing 4 separate swappings, even though you can do your splitting all at once. The computer has too much to think about to do this line and this line for this line and this line. Do it one at a time. And then save your pieces. And then the next thing we would be combining and comparing would be to align the shoulders and make sure you have that nicely matching as well.